Um, Hello everyone, and welcome into the 716 Sports Blizzard with my special guest Nick from the Argo Bones podcast.
Hey, Robbie, thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here. Love the hat, by the way. I'm glad you got it. Sent that to you in the mail last season, and I'm really excited to chat with you about football north of the border, football south of the border, a little bit of maybe some hockey. Looking forward to it.
Um, the the Argos recently played the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Is that correct?
Yeah, they did. It was quite an entertaining game. I know there's some mixed emotions about how the game went. I'll jump straight to the ending because that was probably the crazy bit. So the Argos were down 8 points in the fourth quarter with their last possession of the game. They managed to march all the way down the field in a 9-play drive. They managed to score a touchdown and score a 2-point conversion to tie the game up. But then on the ensuing kickoff, with about 22 seconds left, they kicked it off, and a number of things happened. But the main thing was that Mario Alford, the kick returner, was able to return the ball the length of the field pretty much. I think he caught it around the 15-yard line and ran it all the way back up the sideline for a touchdown for the Rough Riders. So right when there was about 20 seconds left, everybody thought it was going to go to overtime. The Argos were maybe going to be able to pull a come from behind win. The Rough Riders returning that kick for a touchdown is one of these moments where any Argos fans listening, the colloquialism was the Argo bounce. And this week, it turned out that the Argo bounce did not go their way. And in a time where it was all but certain to at least go to overtime, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Um, was there any um plays in that game good for the Argos?
Yeah, there was a lot of good that came out of that game. The big thing was that there's been a lot of pushback on the Argos quarterback, the MOP from the Grey Cup last year, Nick Arbuckle. A lot of people have been kind of critical of his play and thinking that he hasn't particularly played very well these first two games of the season. This week, I thought he looked fantastic. He was, let me just bring up the stat line real quick, 'cause I do have it down here. So he ended up going 26 of 33. So I think that's about a little bit over 80% completion rate. He threw for 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, including a longest pass of 41 yards, averaging 8 yards a throw. So he looked really good out there. The running plays were pretty effective too. Mayan Williams, one of the guys that was a big acquisition for them, they cut Kadeem Carey for. He ran the ball really well in the first half. And then the other thing, just to talk about specific things, they in the opening possession, the Argos managed to march down the field and score a touchdown, which is something we haven't seen from them yet this year. They've been a team that's really struggled in the first half of football games. So for them to come out of halftime being down 17-10, it was a lot better than it has been the last couple of weeks. And then of course, yeah, there's the negatives on how the kick return went, but I think it gives a big boost in confidence in the Argonauts offense that they were able to pull that kind of 2-minute drill, final drive down the field and score a touchdown to tie the game with virtually no time left. It shows that the offense can get the job done under pressure.
Um, when when do you think quarterback Chad Kelly will be ready to come back to play?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's still a little bit of uncertainty and skepticism around it. Right now, I say we're at the phase where Chad Kelly, if they really needed to, he probably could dress and play this week in Ottawa. They play on Sunday night against the Ottawa Redblacks in Ottawa on the road. So I think there's a possibility this week where they could have him kind of move up the next stage in his practice routine. So far in the practices I've been to, he's been gradually taking a little bit more reps and doing more throws, but that's been more just with him and wide receivers. It hasn't really been with the full offense yet. That's still kind of been up Nick Arbuckle's wheelhouse. And then sometimes we'll see their third string quarterback, Jarret Doege, in, or we'll see Tucker Horn in, their second string quarterback, running some odd plays, but generally it's been Nick Arbuckle. I think this week we could see Chad Kelly gradually start to take some more snaps with the full offense going around him. The big concern, of course, is not with his arm. For what I've seen in practice, he's thrown as excellent as he did before he got injured. There's no questions that his arm is fine. It's all whether he has not only the leg strength after coming off such a big surgery, having a metal brace implanted in his leg, but also sort of having that psychologically, having that mindset that you're okay running around with 250, 300-pound men running around you trying to tackle you. There is definitely that kind of worry in the back of your mind that you don't want to injure it again, especially coming off almost a full year to recover it. So that's, I think, kind of the only worry about it. But I think if he's mentally good to go, if he's shown physically, I don't think there's anything wrong with him. So if they have to, he can play this week. But I'm kind of expecting it either to be this week against Ottawa or next week against Hamilton. Sorry for kind of rambling on a bit.
Is there like a main running back for the Argonauts?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because there was a lot of controversy kind of right out of training camp. So the go-to running back this season is Deontay McMahon. He was running back last year and I think the year before as well. So he has been playing in Ryan Dinwiddie's offense the last couple of seasons. Unfortunately, he got injured in the first week of the season there against Montreal. So he's missed this past week against Saskatchewan. And so the guy who has kind of stepped up in that role is Mayan Chop Williams. So he's been in this year taking the majority of reps. And the big controversy was that they cut Kadeem Carey, who was the running back of the team last year, of the Grey Cup winning team, and they decided to part ways with him to instead go with younger blood in Mayan Williams. Do you want to hear my opinions on that? Do you want me to keep talking about that, or do you want me to move on?
Like the running back of it, Williams.
Yeah.
Is he like their main guy now since there was just recently an injury?
Yeah, absolutely. He has been the go-to guy. And from what I remember, I'm just bringing up his profile now. So he's an American. He played for the Ohio State Buckeyes and was a camp selection this year. That I thought was a really good decision. As much as I hate seeing someone like Kadeem Carey go, part of the thing that you always have to remember, especially in the CFL game as opposed to the NFL, there's a lot less opportunities to run with the football, simply because of the nature of it being a 3-down league. But with the wider field and the extra bodies, there's that opportunity for more explosive plays. So what you'll often see both kind of early in the game and at half, and then kind of in the late stages of the game, if a team's got a lead, there's a lot of reliance then on a couple of explosive running plays to get your offense going. So then you're able to really then sell the play action. What really hurt the Argonauts in the first week of the season was that they couldn't really run the ball because they were taking penalties at the beginning of games at the beginning of their drive. So it would be a 1st and 15 instead of a 1st and 10. And once you're kind of in that situation, you can't really run the football because even if you get a good gain of 6 or 7 yards, it's 2nd and 8 and not second and 2. So it makes it really hard to then keep running the football. So then you're kind of stuck having to throw. And then it makes it easier for defenses because they're going to throw the football. You're not planning on running it. So it kind of snowballs like that. So to have Mayan Williams there is good because you're having although you're having a new body and you're having a really fresh guy in there who hasn't worn up a ton of mileage. The average career of a running back's less than 5 seasons. So and guys like Brady Oliveira or like Kadeem Carey, guys who have been in the league for 10 years, they tend to be more the exception, not the norm. And it's always way more likely that these younger guys are able to last a bit longer than some of the older players. So typically you'll see teams tend to opt for the newer and fresher guy. Not to mention with the salary cap era and the money being so tight in the CFL right now, the teams really don't want to invest in a big money back. It's just really expensive in the long run, and where you could put the money towards better spots like offensive linemen or defensive backs, you'd rather see the money going there.
Do you have like a college team that you follow during the college season?
Yeah, not overly. I watch a lot of OUA, youth sports. So, youth sports, formerly known as CIS, is the Canadian University League. And so I watch a lot of that. My alma mater, the school I used to go to, is the Wilfrid Laurier University. So I am a big fan of the Golden Hawks. They were the Yates Cup champions last year. So they won all of Ontario University championships. They beat the Western Mustangs, which is another really big Ontario University team. They beat Windsor, they beat Queens, Guelph, or another couple other schools that are in there that have pretty good football programs. So they finished first there, and then they lost to the Laval Rouge or in the championship game there. They're one of the top schools programs for football in Canada. So they're a team that I watch a lot. In terms of U.S. college football, I don't watch a ton these days. I tend to eye more for Canadian athletes that are playing in college programs because in the CFL, they only do a proper draft for Canadian players that reach the age of eligibility. Whereas for the US American players, we have a protection list system. So teams are able to pick, add players to this negotiation list. And as long as they're not on anybody else's list, you can add any player at any time. They can be an NFL player or a college player. It doesn't matter. And then as long as they're on that team's list, that team is the only team that's allowed to negotiate a contract with them. So if they're on the Toronto Argonauts list, another CFL team like Hamilton can't then try to sign this guy to the Ticats unless they trade for that player's rights from Toronto to Hamilton. So it's a little bit convoluted in that way. But the whole idea is that we want to grow Canadian talent because of the way the ratio is here in the CFL. So we tend to eye for those guys. So I tend to look for guys like that, Canadians in college football teams, rather than cheering for a team specifically. That being said, I do have some sympathies to some of the older schools. Notre Dame is always a really popular one here. And then there's a lot of fans of Alabama, Ohio State, schools like that are still Georgia, another one. They tend to be pretty popular here in Canada.
Like, is the CFL draft different than the NFL draft?
Yeah, it's very different because so like I mentioned before with the protection list, that's just for American players. For the CFL draft, you're only drafting Canadians, and so it puts them in a really interesting scenario because you're drafting from both the U Sports, so the league that my Laurier Golden Hawks are from, but then you're also drafting Canadian players in American college leagues. So you have to play this game where, as a Canadian team like the Argonauts, you're trying to think, okay, if we draft this guy, not only are you worrying is he good enough to play on your team, just like you would if you're an NFL team, is this guy going to make the cut or not? You're also worried on kind of the opposite. Is this guy going to be too good to where an NFL team is going to want him, and then you can't sign him in the CFL because if you're like, let's say I was offering you a contract for the Argonauts at $200,000 a season, but I don't know, Green Bay or Buffalo, the Bills come along and they want to offer you $5 million a season. Like, any player is going to take the $5 million contract, right? So we see that with a couple guys. One that the Argonauts signed not that long ago, or had on their negotiation list. The guy they drafted, their first pick of the draft a couple years ago, was a guy by the name of Jared Wayne, wide receiver from Pittsburgh. Now he's in Houston playing for the Texans. So unless he gets cut or released by Houston and no other NFL team wants him, it's probably unlikely at this point that we're going to see him play for the Toronto Argonauts. But there's a little risk reward. So whereas if you're drafting a guy from U Sports, typically they tend to be more CFL ready because they're playing the Canadian game as opposed to the American game. And sometimes those American players, despite being arguably better athletes, they just can't adjust to the Canadian style of play to the same way that people who have played their entire careers and sort of grown up through it have.
Like the NFL is a 4-down system, and the Canadian football is the 3-down system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that mean like on 3rd down they have to kick the ball to the opposing team?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what puts a lot of pressure on who you draft in the CFL because of that. Obviously, you still want really good offensive linemen, good pass protection for the quarterback. I think there's a lot more emphasis then placed on having good wide receivers and having good defensive backs because not only do you only have 3 downs as opposed to 4, so you have basically one less attempt at a first down. You're probably throwing the ball more, but also the wider field means that you need to have better athletes on both ends of the ball. You're both wide receivers and DBs, they need to be faster. They need to be more agile. They need to be more dynamic. And same can apply for linebackers. Guys tend to be a little bit slimmer. They're not necessarily needing to stop the run game quite as much. And kind of everybody needs to be able to be good in pass protection. The one aspect that's really interesting then to compare are the defensive linemen and the offensive linemen. Them two in Canadian football, you don't see too many 300-pound or bigger offensive linemen. You tend to have slimmer O linemen because especially on the tackles, on the ends, on the corners, you have more agile defensive linemen. They're able to go around a bit easier. So you typically have to have better ends that are able to pick those up. So you do tend to see everybody who's kind of maybe would be considered too small for the NFL and get cut because of that. Often they can find spots in the CFL and excel at it because it tends to lead towards more emphasis on speed than just raw power like you see with certain NFL teams.
Do you want to talk about your next show with Chris?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I do this show, the Argo Bounce. That's where I come from, with my friend Chris Palme, where we talk about the Toronto Argonauts and the happenings of the CFL more broadly. This week, we're having our next show on Thursday at 7 o'clock. Tends to be our go-to time. and we'll be discussing a little bit of reflection on how this past game against Saskatchewan went, as I touched on earlier, but we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. And then we're also going to be talking about this coming week, week 4 of the CFL season, with the Argonauts heading to Ottawa to take on the Red Blacks. And then there's a couple other games going on this week too, of course. Thursday night, Edmonton plays Winnipeg, Montreal's in Hamilton, and BC's in Saskatchewan.
And Winnipeg is the Blue Bombers, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. They were the team that the Toronto Argonauts played in the Grey Cup game last season, one that I am happy to brag that I was there in person for, which was really exciting as a fan. Like, it would be the same when the Bills go to the next Super Bowl and you have your show here live on site for the Super Bowl. It's always it makes it that much more exciting when you have one of your own teams competing for the championship. And I'll tell you, it's even more amazing when they've won. I've been to 4 Grey Cups now, and I've been fortunate to see the Argos attend 2 of them and win both of them in 2012 and again in 2024.
Well, our local lacrosse team, the Buffalo Bandits, just won their 3rd championship in a row.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Chris Palme, I know, is a huge fan of the Buffalo Bandits. He's been there for media. I'm sure he's ran into you there covering them, and it's really exciting, the attendance of the lacrosse games, the turnout there. It's on both sides of the border in Canada and the US. It looks great. I think I read somewhere an article that was saying that actually more people in the States watched that lacrosse final than the NHL Stanley Cup finals, which is quite an amazing thing when you think about it.
Like, what did you think of Game 6 between Florida and Edmonton?
Yeah, it was too bad for Edmonton. I know since I've been alive, I'm 28 now. So as a 97 kid, I have still yet to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup. The last time to do it was the Montreal Canadiens in 1993. So that's 32 years now and counting, if I do the math right. But yeah, it just seemed these last 2 games, Game 5 and Game 6, just Edmonton couldn't get anything going offensively. And give kudos to Florida and their system. They really shut down Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, everybody that was putting up goals for Edmonton. They just couldn't find an answer. And then once Florida got to that kind of early 2-goal lead, they were just able to shut them down. It says a lot to Coach Paul Maurice, the head coach of the Panthers, and everybody with that team, just doing the little things right that win you championships.
I like Paul Maurice, Sam Reinhart. I mean, seeing Florida go back to back kind of reminded me of our local lacrosse team, the Bandits, winning 3 in a row.
Yeah, it's quite exciting, and it makes it even harder and even more rewarding when they're able to do that back-to-back years. I know it wasn't quite the same for the Argonauts because it wasn't consecutive, but the Argonauts won in 2022. They put up a 16-2 regular season in 2023 before losing in the East Final to Montreal, who eventually won the Grey Cup that year. But they were able to come back and then win the Grey Cup again last year. So it is exciting to see that kind of consistent string of dominance, which now in these modern days, with kind of teams not being confined to signing from a small region with salary cap rules implemented to control who you can sign and how many, to kind of control having one team have a super special lineup of all the best players by throwing money at them, it makes it that much more special and rewarding. If you don't mind me asking, how, as a Sabres fan, I know Sam Reinhart was formerly with the Sabres. Are you happy for him now that he was able to win a Stanley Cup, even though it wasn't with Buffalo?
I mean, for Reinhardt to go and win 2 Stanley Cups with Florida, I mean, I I'm happy for him because I liked him when he was here, and I followed him going to Florida.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, I know sometimes I know I'm in Toronto, so just disclaimer to anybody listening, I'm not a Leafs fan. I'm actually a Habs fan. But that being said, here in any of the Canadian markets, we hear it all the time when guys go from one team and then have success somewhere else. For Toronto, it was Phil Kessel when he went to Pittsburgh and won the Stanley Cup with Sidney Crosby. In Calgary, of course, it was with Matthew Tkachuk, who won with the Florida Panthers this year. So yeah, you kind of feel the same thing. And I get that, like, yeah, there's some business involved, but I don't think you should necessarily take it out on someone for leaving your team to go to another team to win it. And I mean, I'd feel kind of the same way with any Toronto Argonaut player. Like if Kadeem Carey, let's say, for the Argonauts goes and wins another Grey Cup this year with Saskatchewan or something like, or some of my friends, guys like Royce Metier in Edmonton, if they're able to pull that off, like good for them. You shouldn't hold a grudge against someone just because they were playing for your team and now you're not. Like that doesn't change who they are as a person. And that I'm sure if you do speak to them, they know how much you meant to them as a fan and supporter of them. So, yeah.
Like that there's a few Bandits players that like well now one of them is their head coach, John Tavares. I mean, I liked him as a player, and now I like him as a coach.
Yeah.
And like with the Bills, they got Brandon Bean, Sean McDermott, and they got like their quarterback Josh Allen and James Cook.
Yeah, they got a pretty stacked lineup in Buffalo, and it was interesting how the mentality kind of shifted when they lost Stephon Diggs, and they kind of, I think one of the things they were kind of criticized was not having like a super huge star wide receiver kind of guy since Diggs left, but that kind of tuning into that mentality, like we play for each other. There's that selflessness to it. It really helped project the Bills and let them go a long run there in the playoffs. It's too bad they're still just the Kansas City Chiefs is just has that little bit of kryptonite on them. But I think if they keep up with it, I do think that the Bills will find their way to a Super Bowl. It's a matter of time because, I mean, like compare it to hockey with Connor McDavid. I know he hasn't won a Stanley Cup in Edmonton, but got them in the show the last 2 seasons. Like it takes a lot of effort even just to get to that point these days in professional sports. So he'll get his shot.
And like when McDavid was drafted,
Mm-hmm.
he was the number 1 guy. The number 2 guy was Jack Eichel. So like Jack Eichel won his Stanley Cup in 2023, I think it was,
Yeah, with Vegas.
with Vegas, and then Florida wins it last year, and then they win it again this year.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with McDavid because he's a free agent this year. So there's still time for him to re-sign with Edmonton or um, whatever the case may be there. I mean, that's part of the fun with sports too. There's that little game of playing armchair GM and trying to make a better team than what your actual GM does. But there's a good reason why they've got that. Actually, well, I got on that topic. So there's a really good book for Toronto Argonauts fans. It's called The Argo Bounce by Jay Teedle, and it's kind of the book that our show takes its name from. And Teedle kind of talks about that, about how right after the Argos won what was then their last Grey Cup in 1952, there was a guy by the name of Harry Sunshine who the club gave $100,000 to go scout players, and this was basically equivalent of giving the fan, an actual fan, money to basically try to recruit and hire players and to manage the team. So and spoiler alert, it did not work out well for the 5 years he was involved with the team, and for the next 25 years after, because this was in 1950, in the early 1950s, and it wasn't until 1983 that the Argos finally won their next Grey Cup. So, and he wrote this in 82, so just before that. So not even knowing they were going to win another Grey Cup. So it just goes to show, yeah, you don't want too much fans don't always know better than experienced managers.
I mean, I want to say hi to Chris if he's like listening, or
Hi, Chris.
I mean, if he catches it in post. I mean, I like what you guys talk about on your show. I think like me getting into Canadian football, I think it's a fun sport to watch, like when the NFL is not in season.
Yeah, I agree, and I like how it is different, because I know we get discussion sometimes. There's been a couple lately by one individual who's pretty prolific on social media that I will not name, being critical of our game, but some of the solutions he provides seems to just be kind of Americanizing the game. But I think in a lot of ways, like, the ways what make it different is what makes it enjoyable. Like, I don't want this to become an NFL clone. I don't want it to be 4-down football with a 2-minute warning and 3 timeouts, and the differences are kind of what makes it fun and enjoyable. And I worry we lose too much of that if everything tries to unify itself under the same rules. So that's what I enjoy about being a CFL fan, and especially as an Argonauts fan, because we get a lot of flack from the rest of the teams in the league, because we typically do have proportionate to the fan base. We have one of the smaller fan bases. The turnouts is always a struggle, even though we live in the largest city in Canada, and the constant challenges of that, whether it's and we as fans amongst ourselves as Argonauts fans argue what we need to do, what the team needs to do, what MLSE needs to do to try to grow that. And yeah, it's at the end of the day, like, I bleed double blue. I am so unbelievably passionate. Like, this thing is my life, just like it is with you at the Bills or the Sabres. If Toronto, if the Argonauts were ever to lose its CFL team, I wouldn't know what I'd do with my life, because it means that much to me and to many other people here in Toronto.
Like, what is the point system for the CFL?
Yeah, so there's not too many differences in terms of the points compared to the American Football League and the Canadian Football League. Still touchdown for 6 points, choice of 1 point, 2 point convert, field goals 3 points, safety for 2 still exists in the same way. The big difference is the Rouge. That's probably the most infamous one that we have in Canada. So anytime on a kicking play, a punt, a pooch kick, a kickoff, a missed field goal, anytime a ball goes into the end zone and either goes through the end zone out of play, or the returner cannot return it out, it would be a touchback in the NFL. That awards 1 point to the team that kicked it. So basically, even though you missed a field goal or you kicked it, you tried a corner kick punt, and instead it goes through the end zone, you're awarded a point. And there's always controversy over whether or not it's good. How we get jokes about how when a team's missed a field goal but still wins the game because of that, yada yada or whatever. The main thing is it's an added element of strategy in the game because, of course, it awards that point. So it changes the scoreboard, it changes the scoring system. So it might force you now to go for 2 later on in the game when you would only just go for 1. But the other thing about it is that when you get that 1 point, you get the ball at the 40, the other team gets the ball at the 45-yard line. So it's in a way, it's also a significant hindrance because you get a point, but you're giving the other team really good field position. So sometimes you'd rather pin a team back at their own 5-yard line rather than getting a point, but giving the team the ball almost at midfield. Other than that, the scoring is exactly the same. There's no added other twists in terms of points.
And like in the NFL, like the Bills, they have what they call a landing zone for the kicks.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So on kickoffs, there's nothing like that in the CFL. It's, if you remember before they changed the rules on the NFL returns, that's how the CFL still is basically. So it's everybody, the ball's kicked, everybody on the kicking team runs down the field, everybody on the receiving team can move, can fall back to set up blocking and then go forward. It's that exact same thing still exists in Canada. I think the only rule that, I don't know how it is in the US before they changed it, but I think the only thing in Canada now is often teams would set up a wall where you had 3 blockers, like kind of almost like holding hands to make like a wall for the returner. You're not allowed to do that anymore. I think that's the only thing really that's kind of changed in the CFL in terms of that. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as it used to be in the NFL before they changed the kicking rules. You know, have one guy back, or usually in the CFL with the wider field, you have 2 returners deep back, and then you'll usually have 5 or 6 in the front line, and then the rest of them would be kind of in the middle to set up blocking.
Do you want to promote your show for Thursday night before I end the show?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned before, Chris Palme and I are going to be live with the next episode of the Argo Bounce. We're going to be live at 7:00 on Thursday. We're going to talk about the Saskatchewan Roughrider game that the Argonauts lost to, and then we're going to be looking ahead to the game this Sunday against the Ottawa Red Blacks. I do plan on going down to that game. It's about a 5-hour train ride from Toronto down there, so I might even get up some courage to ask the communications manager at the Red Blacks, see if I can get a media pass, go for the experience. If not, I'll just attend as your standard fan. So yeah, but Chris and I will definitely have a lot to talk about in greater detail. If any of you listeners are interested in learning more about Canadian football or about the Argonauts specifically, if not, you can always shoot me a DM about anything about the league, about how things are going, about certain individuals that you might have followed in college. I'm always happy to talk CFL football with anybody.
What time is the game on Sunday night?
Good question. I've got it up here. So the game is at 7:00 Sunday, June 29th. And to just double check network wise, because I did not check that before coming on the stream. Wrong channel. So if you're watching in Canada, all the games are available on TSN, which is super easy. The game for Toronto and Ottawa it'll be on CBS Sports Network in the US. And if you're watching anywhere else in the world, it'll be on CFL Plus streaming for free on the CFL's website.
It was fun being able to talk some CFL football, and thank you for coming on, and go Argos.
Thanks, Raleigh. Always a pleasure, and I'm happy to chat with you about the Double Blue anytime. If you ever want to ask me about anything else, by all means, go ahead. And thank you. Go Argos, and take care, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.